So we'll be starting with David, I think, this evening. And I think where we should really start is Victoria, actually, David, after the news last night. I understand it'll be particularly unsettling for all the operators in that particular region. I wondered if you could share a little bit about what you've learned from speaking to your customers today and any advice and suggestions to those listening who might be facing lockdown this evening.
Right. Well, thanks very much. It's unfortunately it's a bit of more of the same. As of 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon, we only had 997 services impacted. But that obviously has increased significantly now because of the government's decision to lock down the whole of Melbourne and Mitchell areas, or to zone them off. So it's going to have a much broader impact. Hasn't gone out to regional areas, but that's the direction they've gone at the moment. There is still, like all of, it is like deja vu when we first went through this process, when we ran into the changes into the ECEC package and with JobKeeper, in that it is uncharted territory. Nobody prepared for this. Nobody was, everybody was being optimistic enough to think that, you know, thank God we've got over this and now we can start rebuilding. Unfortunately, this is a significant setback. The package that's been put forward now is just not adequate for what a lot of services need, and that's what we've been trying to assist a lot of our members with, who have been impacted to the point where it's going to put a lot of people under. People have dropped parents at a rate of knots. A lot of parents are pulling their children out of care, quite frustrated with the fact that this has all happened again. And the last thing they want to do is actually put leave their children on allowable absences, so they still remain enrolled at the service. They're just saying, look, no, I'm just going home, and we'll worry about it later, because they're impacted, their employment's impacted too. So we've still yet to find the bottom of what's going to actually happen in Melbourne, because of the initial stages of information. Inevitably, when we go backwards and forwards with CCS, those will change what the parameters are as we all try and overcome the little lumps and bumps.
Yeah, it's certainly a tricky time. Yeah, and our hearts go out to all of those services struggling right now with coming to terms with what's going on. For those services that aren't in Victoria, though, they face quite a different reality come Monday with the introduction of the transition payment and a return to a co-payment CCS mechanism. Do you have any suggestions or advice on how services can manage, for example, their teams, the workforce? Because I understand that there are some rules and regulations around what you can and cannot do regarding your teams when you're receiving the transition payments. Perhaps a bit of colour around that would be helpful.
Well, there's going to be a little bit of a difficulty with this process, because once JobKeeper goes, then access to the JobKeeper stand-down provisions under the Fair Work Act also go with it. Which means that the employer is then obliged to put on the employees back on the hours and structures that they had pre-JobKeeper. Now, that creates a problem for a number of services, because they just don't have that, because they don't have that level of occupancy yet. Others have got that level of occupancy. However, they've got to move staff around. They've lost some staff. Some were restructured out before we even got to JobKeeper and the ECEC system once that kicked in. So it's difficult, but unfortunately, when we go forward from here, we're very much constrained. It's easy enough for the grant assets being offered, which is a little bit troubling, because if we breach the grant, they can come and get the money back. But the thing that's concerning to me is that they're saying that part of the grant is to say, well, you have to keep everybody employed. That's the easy bit. And they're saying that you only have to employ somebody for more than one shift. Well, that's all very well, but if they were actually receiving 6 shifts, 5 shifts a week or whatever, previously, that's what they're entitled to. So unless they accept this drop, then there's going to be other problems. So there's going to be a lot of disputation during this period. We can't make staff redundant. If we terminate someone's employment because maybe they're not successful during the probationary period, or they're underperforming to the extent that termination is warranted, then we have to then go through the process of replacing them, whether we need them or not. So it's going to be a very tight control for the next 12 weeks. What we've really got to be looking at is what we do after the 27th of September, when all of the restraints come off and we can then function. We can't put our fees up. We can't do anything at the moment. So it's I'm seeing this time as being a period of time when we can do a lot of consulting with staff to try and get them lined up the way we want them to go. But equally, if that's not what they're going to do, if they're not going to be constructive about sorting the service, how it moves forward into the whole new world, the new kind of normal, then we know what to do in terms of when the restraints come up, and we can do a formal restructure, because it will mean that redundancies will kick in. The difficulty is, though, of course, a lot of services are going to get to that point, and they can't afford to do things like lay staff off with redundancies, because they've spent any surplus they had just getting there. So it's a catch-22.
Surviving, that's right. That's right. Well, that's very clear and very helpful. That is going to be interesting as well. Looking ahead, though, beyond COVID, beyond the 27th of September, beyond the 1st of January next year, how do you see care evolving? Education and care, what will it look like in the future to you?
No, I need my crystal ball. The greatest problem is knowing where this is going to go, but at the bottom line is, I think it's very clear, by the end of this period, we will have had 30 weeks. So it's over 6 months of businesses operating differently, and parents attending work differently. Cafes will be cafes, bars will be bars, restaurants will be restaurants. Those sorts of things will return to what they do. But the way a majority of staff work in their different career areas will change. There's a lot more resistance, or what I'm finding from a lot of my clients is that they're reporting to me that there's a lot more people shortening their care arrangements. So they might not be actually using as many days as they used to. There's still that pressure on to maybe give them more days when they're getting to the end of their early childhood education period before they go into formal schooling. But those earlier years, people are starting to make choices like, well, maybe we can stay at home a bit more, or maybe we can utilise whatever we've put in place up to now, because we've had 30 weeks of children being with their grandparents or being with uncles and aunts. These things are factors that are going to come into play. Plus, when this all ends, it's hit September, end of September, we will glance through October, then we're heading November, December, which is traditional drop period for us when people start taking their children out of care. So we're not really going to see anything surface till February, March next year. It's it's absolutely the worst time that this could have happened, and we just have to. I think the task now is just to lock everything down as much as we can during the next 12 weeks, and during that period form a plan to go forward, which is what we're talking to clients about.
Yeah, and any assumptions in planning should be at the conservative level. To reflect the uncertainties around 3 days a week to 2 days a week, 2 days a week to 1 day a week. And quite right, we won't know until next year, but that's certainly important to think about when we're planning. David, thank you very much. That's your 3 questions.
No problem. Thank you.